Well, g'day everyone. It's the Two Ordinary Cops, and we are back yet again for another week. We're going into 78 episodes, so pretty excited. I can't believe it's actually gone this far. Damo, how are you, mate?
Good, mate. Good. Yeah, 78. We'll keep going. It's enjoyable getting a bit of feedback. It's good. Yes.
Yeah,
How's Brizzy, mate?
yeah, mate. Well, it's actually been pretty good over the last week, just busy. And we do apologise. We're going to give a couple of shout outs. There's a couple of people who got in contact with us, and look, keep them on coming because it motivates us as well. But we don't need too much motivation, especially to have a beer or two. But yeah, no, it's really good. Some of the feedback we're getting, and we've had quite a lot in the last week. But we'll save our shout outs for next week. But do you want to go on to what we're going to touch on today?
Yeah, so this week on Monday, the 7th of July, the inquest findings, so the coronial inquest findings into the death of Kumanjayi Walker were released by the Northern Territory Coroner Elizabeth Armitage. She did that out in Ewan Damo community. And I've had a very brief read of the first 4 pages, but I was busy in Toowoomba with family, so I haven't gone right through it and I haven't had a lot of time. But it is 683 pages long. So it's going to take a minute. But there's a couple of takeaways where straight away I looked at it and I kind of rolled my eyes. And I thought, here we go. We had an opportunity to tell a bit of truth. And look, I'm sure there's truth on both sides to a point, but there's things in there that just make me go, for God's sake. So we can have a bit of a chat about that. It's all out there now. Everything that we say is completely our opinion. It has nothing to do. We're not defaming anyone. We're not doing anything like that. I'll just put that little legal caveat on it. I'm sure that in this country you can still have a conversation about something. So we're going to do that. But what I did see going through it and what the headlines are sort of coming out with, or the major catch, was that, Zach Rolfe has been found to be racist and that he benefited from a racist organisation, basically. And she sort of said, I have no evidence to disprove that. Well, that means you can't prove it. So to me, it's like you can't just label someone a racist. So I think we can talk about that a little bit, the fact that some of the language used in all walks of life can be rough and tumble. Policing is a brutal sport up in bloody, not a sport at all, a brutal occupation up in the NT especially. And there are times when people use words to vent, and it doesn't mean for a second they're actually racist. To me, someone who is racist is someone who hates a person because of their race and no other reason. And that, in their view, that person, because of their race, can have no redeeming features. Well, that's ridiculous. I mean, if he was racist, why did he jump into a raging torrent and rescue Chinese nationals?
Yeah.
Why did he work? You could not work in the Northern Territory Police for any length of time and be a true racist, hating Aboriginal people, because you deal with Aboriginal people all the time as offenders or victims or missing persons, or any interaction that people may have with police, you will have with Aboriginal people, positive, negative, neutral, and constantly. If you hated Aboriginal people, you wouldn't be there because you wouldn't want to be anywhere near it. So I think taking out a text message to a friend or whatever, where he's dropped a word in there that can be considered racist. Well, the other thing is there was plenty of racial hatred came back at us just quietly. And,
Well, probably more so.
it was it's tiresome because they didn't really, in my view, explore enough about the policing and the positive redeeming features. It was almost like, let's find exactly how we can prove that Zach Rolfe is racist and that the death of Kumanjayi Walker poor little Kumanjayi Walker had nothing to do with him and a lot to do with policing. Well, I mean, we can pull things to pieces all day, every day. The fact is, we knock on doors, walk in and arrest people in houses, in communities, multiple times a day, every day of the year, and no one gets shot. It's amazing in the Northern Territory, that there aren't just heaps more police shootings. The amount of restraint shown by the Northern Territory Police, quite often to their detriment or putting themselves at significant risk in order not to use high-level force, is unbelievable.
It is.
I've been involved in, and you would have been involved in, plenty of situations where, had we kept pushing forward, we would have been confronted with a situation where lethal force may have been justified. And not on one person, it might have been on a group of people who are attacking us with weapons that were likely to cause death or serious harm. So to me, it's like, to go that, they should have shut down and he's considered high risk. Mate, I would even argue that a very large number of arrests made in the Northern Territory in remote communities could be considered high risk if you put them through a matrix and actually weigh up what could go wrong and think of as many different examples of what could go wrong. But the fact is, if we did that, you'd need 1,000 more cops because it would just be so time and resource intensive and not efficient. So the fact is that one thing she did mention there was officer-induced jeopardy or something similar. I haven't got anything written down in front of me, but basically what that means is that police, by rushing forward and putting themselves in a situation where they themselves then become in danger and are now justified in using lethal force. So it's basically a way of saying that had the police just held back, this may not have happened.
Yeah. Mate,
what are your
I'll
thoughts?
just cut in. Yeah, mate. Oh, yeah. Yeah. It's hit a nerve for Damo, everybody. And likely so for me as well. But look, Walker's behaviour leading up to that basically showed, what he was about. I mean, he chased somebody with a tomahawk the day before and all that sort of thing. You can't go in and give these people hugs. A lot of the time, there's no negotiation whatsoever. You need to go in and look. I think they did it reasonably well. They went in and tried to get him, with the amount of police, and you never know how something's going to turn out. The fact is, I've got to read through it, but the fact is, he got stabbed in the shoulder with a pair of scissors, edge weapon, and that's knife equals gun, or sharp implement equals gun. He got stabbed in the shoulder. At the end of the day, you can't sit there and say, look, they're implying he's a racist. Well, why didn't he shoot anybody before? Realistically, I mean, and she wanted also that task force or whatever it was disbanded.
Yeah, the incident response team. It was disbanded a long time ago because of this. But, I mean, the whole idea of that incident response team was that the Territory Response Group, who is actually the police tactical group for the Northern Territory, are based in Darwin. They'll go to Alice Springs, but they're going to take a while to get there. So what they wanted was an intermediary. There are a number of ex-TRG members in Alice Springs as general duties supervisors, and they came up with this plan to get the guys trained in just sort of middle range tactics. Other jurisdictions have them. I know Victoria has got the critical incident response team cert, and that's not to the level of special operations group. But within that little team, I know that they're armed with long rifles, with long guns. So they've got rifles, assault rifles in there, a higher level use of force options, so less lethal options. They hold the negotiator skill set for Victoria Police. Queensland Police have got the public order response team, I think it is. Same with New South Wales, the public order riot squad. So there's a middle ground team in most jurisdictions. The Northern Territory doesn't really have it. You sort of just throw your most experienced GDs members at a big job like that and wait for TRG if it's a major issue. But the thing is, in Alice Springs, they can happen pretty regularly, and you just don't have them there. They're not close by. So that's why that little team existed anyway. But I mean, the reason that needed to exist is because the crime rate and the level of danger in Alice Springs is extreme.
Yeah.
The homicide rate, this is what we're criticising police for being on their front foot. Well, being on their front foot will save lives because it removes a person who's proven through their behaviour that they are very dangerous and capable of high-level use of force and escalating to the point where it looks like they are now willing to use weapons likely to cause death or serious harm against other people. So, to me, hanging back and waiting, I guarantee this, if the police had have hung back and waited till the next morning and there'd been a domestic violence assault that night by Walker on his partner, which he'd done many times before, then there would have been hell to pay for the police. So damned if you do, damned if you don't. Walker, when he first approached the police and gave a false name, he appeared calm. He appeared apparently compliant, is the term we use. He then stood there nonchalantly. There was criticism that he held his mobile device. I don't think it was a phone. I think it was actually his iPad. I can't remember his iPad or his phone. Held it up next to him to compare a photograph and just check his identity. That's super common. We did that all the time.
Yeah.
We're a bit dinosaurish. We didn't have them a lot, but we certainly had iPads for a fair while, and we used to do that. We used to compare someone's photo. You're still tactically aware. The fact of the matter is then that Walker went from 0 to 1,000 and pulled out an edge weapon, stabbed Rolfe in the shoulder. And people going, oh, it was one thing I did read in the coronial was a very minor wound to the shoulder. Yeah, sure. In the end, it had to go through his uniform and through his vest to get into his shoulder. It was 100 millimetres from his carotid artery. That wouldn't have been a minor wound.
Mm.
And pointy nose surgical scissors, well, they can penetrate 3, 4, 5 centimeters or more into you very easily. And that's deep enough to go into a major artery. So I'm not about belittling that. The other trouble with those scissors, he had them wrapped in his fingers and couldn't easily be disarmed.
Yeah.
So
Look, the
not
fact
sure.
that Oh, sorry, mate. I'm just going to cut in there. The fact is also he can use those weapons again, like you were saying. They were he basically had them encased in his hand, and
Yeah.
what's to say he didn't stab again, and easily hit an artery. I mean, the thing is, he was the one that used force against police before police, basically incapacitate the threat. That's basically all they did.
He started the fight.
He did, yeah,
He did start the
exactly.
fight. And I think another point, look, we're not going to dwell completely on this because what we're going to do is there will be an opportunity once we've digested it. We'll speak about this more. We've got something in the pipeline coming up, so we'll have a good talk about it then. But the one thing that I did read in response from Zach was he said the infantilization of Aboriginal people is not to their benefit. So basically, the mood, and I remember hearing this off a number of people, the mood throughout the coronial was that all the cultural sensitivity in the world was being shown to Aboriginal people. There was absolutely no cultural sensitivity being shown whatsoever to anybody else.
Mm.
And the police, there's police officers who are involved in that, who were hung, drawn, quartered, named in public, photographed by the media leaving, absolutely lambasted in the media and by the coroner and by the counsel assisting the coroner. And there was absolutely no help given to them whatsoever. So, I mean, straight away, it was a bit interesting to watch and realise how that went on. And I wasn't a big fan of that at all. But
No.
the fact is that I've got an old saying that I used to use when people would come up to us. If we're arresting an Aboriginal man on the street in any community, I've had this a few times where someone's come up to me, and normally a Caucasian person has come up and started ripping into us for how dare you do that to this Aboriginal man and all this sort of thing. It's like, well, hang on. Is this man an adult human being? Oh, that's despicably racist. How dare you? So I said, no. I'm asking the question. I think he is. I think he's an adult human being. Is there a set of rules called laws that exist in this country that apply to everybody, all people? So this man is an adult human being. I completely agree. He has committed very serious offences and potentially domestic violence offences of violence. He needs to be apprehended. He's actively resisting us. So we're then using force to restrain and arrest this man. Do those laws apply equally to every single adult human being? And the answer is always yes. And if the answer is, but any other answer to that, I'm sorry, I'm not the racist. You are. So that was my old comeback to any of that rubbish because it was, I'm sorry, but there is an Aboriginal victim here. Does she not count? And I'm just using an example. The one that's coming to mind was an Alice Springs arrest where a woman who'd come up from Melbourne just into us in the street because we were arresting a man. And what she didn't know was her partner was at the front counter of the police station, bleeding all over the floor of the police station, having been assaulted with a stick in the Todd River. So we've got a description. We've responded to the Todd Mall with the description of the offender, found him, knew who he was, gone to arrest him. He's tried to run away. He's then turned on us and tried to assault us. So he's been arrested with force and beaten. And just when I say beaten, as in defeated, he's been arrested. He actually got taken into custody. And that's when this woman ripped into us. And there was no, does he need any help? For one, if you can see the police actively arresting somebody, there is a place to work out whether what they've done is right or not, and it's in court or it's through an inquiry
Yes.
after the fact. If you come in and start interfering with them, you're committing an offence. Simple as that. Police have there's safety in place. We're trained to deal with tactical situations. You come in and hinder police in the execution of their duty, and you're putting people at risk. You're putting lives at risk, including your own a bit, but you're also risking that person escaping lawful custody. The fact is, you can make a complaint and say you didn't like what you saw, but unless no, I'm not even going to say that, because it just doesn't happen much in Australia at all. Very rarely, unless the police response is so grotesquely out of proportion, and you've seen the entire thing. Even then, what are you going to do? You've just become another offender for this person. So there's so much accountability for the police. They've got a body-worn camera in the middle of their chest that's recording full audio, full video. So's their offsider, so's their partner. It's just you just don't interfere if you see police apprehending someone.
No,
If you
that's
see
right.
police getting overpowered and you feel like you're able to assist them, but yeah, if you don't like what's happening, make the complaint. But that was a pretty good segue, a pretty good sidetrack. But anyway,
Yeah, that's right.
my point with that woman was, would she have done the same thing if I was arresting a Caucasian man? Probably not.
Yeah.
So it's this infantilization of Indigenous people that these situations. I remember seeing it firsthand through the Emergency Operations Centre, where we'd get a lockdown in a community and it was straight away, oh, now we have to do this very sensitively and this and that and that. The same people a week before were willing to sling people and fine people hand over fist. And all of a sudden it's like, no. We need to contain the virus, and we do it. Of course we do it well, but it's like, you've got to treat everyone the same. I didn't understand the difference in treatment. But anyway, that's my rant, mate.
Yeah, mate. Like, that's exactly right. Yeah, there was something come out, and of course, there's always tangents that come out of this sort of stuff, and they're arguing about how many Indigenous people in custody. Well, look, I had a good think over my time in the Territory, and of course, yes, we are predominantly dealing with Aboriginal people up there. That's just a case of things, and yes, a lot do get arrested. However, does anybody ever think about who the victims are of these people we're arresting? And I would sit there, and I was giving a rough estimate, thinking back over my mind of the 10 years, and I would say 80% of Aboriginal people arrested, they had Aboriginal victims. So where's the racism? Really? So do we sit there and go, no, you know what, mate? Go and flog your wife. That's all right, because you're Indigenous. I can't arrest you.
Yeah, you can't be arrested.
These people are actually breaking the law. And I think I've said it before, but I used to come down south and people go, they'd talk about how many Indigenous people in custody. I said, do you think I like doing paperwork? Do you seriously think I'll rock up at work and go, you know what? Let's go and arrest an Aboriginal person. No, because I'd rather not do the paperwork. I'd rather be eating donuts and having coffee with my feet up on the desk.
Come now. No. Mate, I totally agree. It's a little bit ridiculous. But I think what we might do is we'll talk more about the actual inquest once we've had the opportunity to really go through it.
Yeah.
We'll pick it to bits. We'll get some talking points out, and we'll go from there. But another thing that came out of this, I found myself, I've just come back from Toowoomba, literally today, got back half an hour ago. And my sister-in-law and mum were talking about this coronial inquest, and they both said, I thought it was all finished. I thought he was found not guilty, and that's the end of that. And then I explained how, that was the Supreme Court trial for murder. So that was him charged with murder and being put to trial on that charge. What's happening now is a coronial inquest. So it's an inquest into the cause of death. And there's a legislated outline of what a coronial inquest is supposed to achieve. And the Coronial Act, the Coroner's Act, is quite extensive. But I thought we may as well finish off this one by kind of explaining the difference between the criminal courts. We won't go into the civil courts so much, but then we can mention the coronial inquest process in the coroner's court. So,
mate, I'll just cut in. Look, I think that's a really good idea, because there's there was a lot of misunderstanding, and even I was chatting to friends here, and they don't entirely understand. And look, it's obviously hit a nerve, this whole thing. But you are probably the better one to talk about it, considering you were the coroner's Connie for quite a long time. I dealt with coronials a bit. I did my fair share, that's for sure. But however, you would have seen a completely different side.
Well, I was involved in quite a few inquests, so matters that I was the case officer for, purely coronial matters, which means we don't have an offender, we just have a deceased person. Excuse me. And what we're trying to do is the coroner has the responsibility to report basically to Parliament, or just report to the public, any unexpected death. So a reportable death is defined, and I'm probably slightly off, but it's any unexpected, unexplained, or violent or suspicious death, or a death that happened while under anaesthetic. Anything that falls into that is what's called a reportable death, which means that police will attend and investigate on behalf of the coroner. And what their goal is that they have to provide a report to the coroner and satisfy the coroner on a number of different things. So that's the identity of the person, and we have to provide evidence for all of this. So it'll be the identity of the person, the date of death, the cause of death, any medical history, anything that can be relevant to that, and circumstances surrounding the death. Now, the coroner has discretion under the Coroner's Act to allow certain evidence or to request further investigation. And they also have the ability to hold what's called an inquest. Now, an inquest appears similar to a trial, but it's not. It kind of isn't. What it is that the report and the investigators, who are generally police on behalf of the coroner, provide a report to the coroner. And then what can happen is those people, all the witnesses and the evidence that is produced to support the cause of death or any contributing factors to the death. And a lot of this can be to do with systems that are in place that aren't good enough, or levels of service from different government departments that aren't that may have shortcomings in them, and as a result, the coroner can make recommendations. So the coroner has the discretion to allow any evidence they want into the court if they believe it may consider them informing a finding, in developing what's called a finding. So what happens at the end of the inquest is that the coroner delivers a finding, and that finding doesn't mean someone's guilty, someone's not. They can make recommendations within their findings, and I'm sure there's plenty of recommendations in this one. I just haven't read them yet.
Yeah, just a lot of you.
So anyway, a lot of most coronials, inquests, I should say, do provide recommendations, and it's normally it could be that they're recommendations to Parliament that laws should be brought in place to change the way things are done in order to prevent further death. So the reason these recommendations are generally made is in order for something not to occur again, basically. So the way this particular one and others, the one that I was involved in that was quite well reported at the time, was the death of 2 German nationals in the Trafina Gorge in just out of Alice Springs. And they died of exposure. And the reason that an inquest occurred was because how was it that 2 highly intelligent people were able to get lost in searing heat in February in Alice Springs, temperatures 46 degrees and above. And once you're walking through the actual Trafina Gorge, surrounded by that big, heavy, dark rock, potentially 10, 15 metres high either side, and walking on a sandy riverbed, the heat's massively concentrated. So it would have been a lot hotter than 46 degrees in that actual gorge. So the things that they looked at was who were they, how'd they die, and then they wanted to know how was it possible that these people were able to access a national park in dangerous conditions, walk around and not be given warnings or anything like that. So basically what could be done in the future that could prevent this from occurring. Other recommendations can be that people be investigated for criminal behaviour. So the normal process and the example here that I will use is a police shooting. The normal process for a police shooting will be that unless it's very blatantly obvious in an initial investigation that it's a murder or that the shooting and someone dies was unlawful, what will happen is it will go to a coronial inquest. All deaths in custody will go to inquest. If someone dies in police custody, and police custody has a very
vague.
It's not vague. It's actually very specific about how what a death in custody. People think a death in custody is if they die with the police holding them or they're in a holding cell or something like that. Well, it's not just that. It's actually a little bit wider than that. Basically, if they've been released from custody and then died within something like 24 hours, and it can be linked back that there's been some involvement with police, then it will go to inquest and prisons for that matter. So any person in a custodial setting will be, and they die, or they die as a result of contact or from whatever has happened with that coronial setting, that will go to a coronial inquest. And from those recommendations, normally that is where any recommendation will be made that prosecution is recommended, or that the DPP should consider my findings and also consider what the investigation has been done by the police as well. So the other thing is this gets quite nitty gritty because there's evidence allowed in a coronial inquest that is not allowed in a criminal trial. So there's a lot to it. There's a reason that a law degree, just to start off as a very basic lawyer, is 4 years, because there's a lot to it. People dealing with coronial inquests have been lawyers for normally 20 plus years. So there is a lot to it. But that's why the call was made at the time when the Zach Rolfe shooting happened, or the Kumanjayi Walker shooting happened, was my call at the time was you put the cart before the horse. So it doesn't look like on the face of it there's a murder here. It looks on the face of it that there's a lawful killing. So let's actually have a coronial inquest into this matter, and the coroner can make recommendation whether she believes that a prosecution should be considered. So she can't order that a prosecution take place. She can recommend to the the Director of Public Prosecutions that their office examine the coronial and recommend to the police whether the person should be arrested or not. So this is back to the separation of powers.
Yeah.
So anyway, so anyway, that's how all that works. But I think the big breakdown of all that is that the Supreme Court, the criminal court, is that a person, there are allegations made against a person, and that person is formally charged by the body responsible for that in the government setup, the executive arm, which is the police. The police then refer those charges through the Director of Public Prosecutions, which is a separate organisation again, and they present the matter to the court. So they mention the matter in the court. The court is the one that is the judiciary. So they adjudicate the prosecution, and they determine guilt or not. And then they also the judge will take into account what has actually occurred and apply the sentencing laws and the sentencing rules and apply a sentence to that person. So it's all separate. It's separate the whole way along, so that there is no person who is judge, jury, and executioner. The idea is that the powers are separated out, and for the whole concept behind it is that it provides fairness to a person, so that the government can't just put their heel on your neck of anyone at any whim. There's protections in place, and it's the way that, yes, this person has done this, and justice now has to be carried out. So there is a lot to it. That's the criminal court. There is other aspects to the legal areas. Sorry, mate, you go ahead.
Yeah, mate, just touching on the separation of powers. Unfortunately, these days, I don't think it doesn't seem to be very separate at all. And look, I can name a number of incidents that I know about where one influences the other, and you should not be allowed to. And I think maybe actually even our politicians and the hierarchy of the police and also the courts need to understand what the separation of powers mean. Because I think the problem is, as soon as you get influence from another area, it can influence the public, and it's very dangerous. The police talk in facts. Like you said before, we're hunters and gatherers. We get the facts. The facts are this. That's it. You can, if you want to jump up and down, you want to throw a protest and all that sort of thing, you know what? Go ahead. However, if you don't like it, then take it up to Parliament, get them to change the laws, and they can discuss it up there, and then we'll follow suit. But then you might lose a whole lot of police officers as well. So, there's a consequence to every action. But the fact is, stick within your lane.
Yeah.
Basically, for all the three, separation of powers. You've got to understand where the boundary is. There's nothing wrong with asking or inquiring, but as soon as you start demanding, because I know politicians, as soon as they get public pressure for something, they want action taken. Well, hold on a minute. Where are our resources and all that sort of thing? So the fact is, we've followed the legislation which you've put in place.
Yeah.
So this is, and this is what people need to understand. And I will actually give a little bit for the courts. A lot of people do blame the judges. However, they are also constrained by legislation. So it's easy to sit there and go, why didn't the judge do this? Well, might be worth talking to your Parliament about that, because they're also constrained. So just give judges a bit of a break every now and again. And not so much in this inquest. I don't agree with it. But like I said, we'll go more into depth later on.
Yeah, and one thing now, I could feel eyes rolling all over the world when they go, police make shit up all the time, which is mostly bullshit. We're disinterested. A lot of the people I dealt with were disinterested. There was no maliciousness. It was, well, he's going to jail. That's it. He's done this. There's the allegation. There's the evidence. There's the file. So you can say he made all this shit up, blah, 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 blah. It's like, righto, so test it in court. Because in court, it's got nothing to do with us. We're just another person who will be called upon to give evidence to other people who don't necessarily like us one bit or at all, and the evidence will be tested. And a finding of not guilty will normally be brought about if the facts aren't lined up or there isn't enough evidence to actually support what's going on. It could be that they are guilty as sin. The fact is that this person definitely did it. If you can't prove that to the correct standard in court, doesn't matter. There was an old saying, and every copper on earth would know it, if it's not what you know, it's what you can prove. So you've got to have evidence for every part of a charge, and we've spoken about this a number of times. But every offence will have a breakdown in it. There's a legal breakdown of how an offence is written in legislation called points of proof. So any person, a person in a public place who commits this, which is defined, is guilty of an offence. So the points of proof for that would be any person, ID offender, number one, Who? If we don't know who they are, case dismissed. So you've got to prove beyond reasonable doubt the identity of the offender in a public place. Well, a public place is defined. So you've got to prove that all this took place in a public place in order to meet the points of proof. Did commit this offending. So what you then need to do is that whatever offending. So summary offences I'm just talking about now. They urinated in public for really basic levels. Did urinate in a public place in the view, and it'll be in the view of members of the public or other. And quite often the next part will be it is irrelevant whether there was actually any members of the public present at the time. So you've got to prove all that. Okay, so this person did this. We've got body-worn camera of him slug in hand having a leak on the road. So, righto, no trouble. He's committed the offence. We've got all the evidence we need to prove it, and you put the matter before the court. That's at the lowest end. You've got to remember, when you hear all these charges, Trident was a big one, we'd have multiple counts of unlawful use of a motor vehicle, multiple counts of unlawful entry, aggravated robbery. All these words you hear, aggravated, there is a definition of what aggravates robbery. Robbery is defined. It's 211, Section 211 of the Criminal Code Act. So it's defined. Everything in there is defined. You've got to line up evidence you've got a point of proof for each point. That's why people go, why'd they drop these charges? And the reason might be is we just don't have the evidence to drag something like that over the line.
Yeah.
You know, there are checks and balances everywhere because as a constable, nothing that you do gets over the line unless it goes through your supervisor. Now, a diligent supervisor should be going through and making sure that you have covered your points of proof, that you have the evidence to prove what you're alleging before it goes any further, because that's the first gatekeeper. Then that matter will go from the sergeant who signed off on it, clink, clink, put their name on it. The monkey's off the constable's back. It's now on the sergeant's back. It goes to prosecutions. Prosecutions can read a file and go, no, there's not enough evidence here. We can't do this. And a sergeant really at that level should be able to pick that up.
Yeah.
And
yeah,
then
there
it
shouldn't
moves
be
from
a lot
there
of
to court.
stuff. Yeah, there shouldn't be a lot of stuff going through to prosecutions. It's not, can't prove all the points of proof, that's for sure. Yeah.
But once again, sorry, mate, before you move on, I'll just say there that you've got to remember the humans involved in all of this process are exactly that. They are human. They're from all walks of life. They might have had enough sleep the night before. They might be ill. There might be things on their mind. To be human is to err. We make mistakes. So that's why all these checks and balances exist, because humans, no one is perfect. There is no one on earth who doesn't make a mistake. So that's why all these checks and balances, because at some point it will be picked up along the way.
Well, yeah, exactly. And look, I just wanted to add in there, mate. There's also opinion files. So if you get something and you're going, oh, it's just on the, I don't know if we've got enough. And look, crime probably deal with this quite a bit. You know, we haven't got quite enough. Have we got enough to charge? So you put all your evidence in a file, you send it off to DPP, which, you know, it's just another fresh set of eyes, but it's another tick in the box you've got to get before you move forward. And you give it to them, and sometimes, a lot of times, they'll come back and go, "You're very close. If you can get this, this, and this, then we'll go ahead with it."
Yeah.
So, and look, I did a few of them in my time. I'll put things up to DPP quite a bit just to sit there and go, "Look, I don't know. Am I heading in the right direction? You know, what more do I need before you take this?" And look, they're very good at coming back to you. So,
I tell you what I used. I've got a really good example of an opinion file. So I'll just explain it a bit more. So an opinion file is where the police want professional input from the Director of Public Prosecutions or their representative as to their legal opinion on whether, so from a qualified lawyer, whether there is enough evidence to proceed. And people would be sitting there going, well, bloody work it out. It can't be that difficult. Well, I'll give you an example. I had a sexual assault matter where the woman was definitely sexually assaulted. I mean, she was definitely assaulted and she'd had sex. And she was very, very, very intoxicated and couldn't remember anything about it. But other people had mentioned certain things. So there was grey all around it. There was, on the face of it, this is a woman who'd been badly beaten and also had sexual intercourse. She couldn't remember anything, and she was also a fairly reserved person and wasn't necessarily pushing it forward. She did say in her statement that I didn't want to have sex with anybody that night, and anyone who did that should go to jail for that. So we had that. We had a complaint of this happened, but we had very vague identity. We then got down the track in the investigation, we did get DNA back and we found an offender. So we then questioned that offender, and that person was going, oh, we had sex, but it was fully consensual. We got together I didn't assault her. I don't know what happened I didn't know who beat her up, but we met at a party and we had sex. She was drunk. I was drunk. It happened. So straight away, that's where the grey comes in, because this woman was beaten up. We can't prove the assault. We could prove that person had sexual intercourse with this victim, but he's now saying that it was. She can't disprove it because she's saying it was. I can't remember it, but I don't want to have sex. I didn't want to have sex with him last night. He's saying, yeah, we were both drunk and we did, but she was into it. So it was back and forth, and this is where that grey comes in, and that's why we needed to put an opinion file through. What happened with that opinion file was it came back to me with, there is insufficient evidence to prosecute. And that's good, because what I've now done is I've taken the monkey off my back of going, I, as a detective senior constable, determined that there is insufficient evidence to prosecute. The public must be reassured that the police will investigate this thoroughly and explore all options in order to bring the best outcome for the victim. So for me, it was, I never arrested anybody, but I definitely put in an opinion file to the Director of Public Prosecutions, who is the separate government authority that determines whether something goes to court. That separate government authority came back to me and said there is insufficient evidence to prosecute. Once I brought that back, I can, in my heart of hearts, say that I have carried out a very thorough investigation into this matter, and I presented the matter to the Director of Public Prosecutions, and the recommendation is this. If anyone wants to kick up a stink, they can go to the Director of Public Prosecutions, because I've explored all my options. And that's why opinion files are used most of the time. It's where you've got these matters that are really grey, and what you've got to do is, you've not just got to think you've done everything, you've got to provide evidence, once again, to a third party who may carry out some kind of inquiry into the police response in relation to this matter, that the police have done everything that they can do, that they can possibly do for the victim. And they're always left open, should further evidence come to light, the matter will be reconsidered. However, with the current level of, and they might even come back and say, hang on, you haven't spoken to this person, which is pretty unlikely at that level, because it'll go through a detective sergeant first, and they will go, well, hang on, we've got further lines of inquiry here. So basically, it's when you've fleshed out all of your lines of inquiry and you're still grey, that's where you'll get an opinion, get it back. No, we don't have enough. I've had other ones we've put them through thinking we might. I don't think we're going to go any good here, and they've come back and said, no, we're going ahead. We're going to take it to trial and test the evidence and test the witnesses out in court. So,
Yep. Yeah. Had plenty of them. I had one years ago, and this is one where I actually took a child. It was a 76-page document, I think, by the end of it. But basically, she gave birth to this child, and we deemed her incapable of caring for that child, and we took the child straight off her. And she's had every kid removed beforehand as well. After the birth, basically the doctor, does a examination of the child and had a cleft palate, and he goes, this is basically due to drinking and all that
fetal
sort of
alcohol syndrome. Yeah.
And anyway, it's never been done before, but I actually put an opinion file up to DPP in the fact of, could we charge her with unlawfully caused serious harm, because she had full knowledge of everything, that because she's had kids taken off her before that, she knew that kids could be their health could be put in danger by actually consuming their stuff while she's pregnant. And look, unfortunately for her, she didn't actually so much, and I know I'll probably get some bite back about this, but you weren't there, you haven't walked in our shoes, and you haven't been there investigating it. But they just simply said, "That's all right, we'll have another one." That was their thing. We'll take a kid, we'll just have another one. Yeah, but the problem is you're bringing the kid in this world, which potentially could have deficiencies because of your behaviour while you're pregnant. And they came back.
Sorry, mate, you just finish off, and I'll tell you why they can't be charged. But keep going. Yep.
But they actually came back and said, you know what, there is a possibility there, if you get the right evidence, that you could go forward with this. But I know it's never been done before. But mate,
so the thing is, the definition of a person. So you got to remember, everything in the law is defined. That normally a piece, if you're ever interested, open up a piece of legislation, especially to do with criminal code or anything to do with criminality. So police in the Northern Territory, Police Administration Act, but there's a different one. There's a similar but different act in every state, and they will open up with a table of contents, and then they'll have definitions. And the definitions pages go for pages and pages because everything is legally defined. It's all written out by lawyers and argued in Parliament, and they come to a conclusion. So, do you know what the definition of a person is? A person is defined. I don't know it word for word because I haven't got it in front of me, but it's basically defined as any person who has been completely delivered either by cesarean section or vaginally or any other means from their mother and has their own circulation of blood, which I mean they do anyway, and is capable of sustaining independent life. That's a person. So the thing is, it's unlawfully cause serious harm to another person. So the law, forget everything else, the law, and this is not to you, this is more to the audience who aren't completely savvy with all this. If you don't meet the definition of a person, you can't be the victim of serious harm. If you're an unborn child, you're not a person yet. It's a legal definition.
No, that's true. However, they are a person now.
That's right.
And I mean, it just becomes it becomes an argument of law. It would be a massive argument in law, and sometimes you can get case law come out of that because or legislation can be changed. That's why you put these things forwards.
And I mean, there is a different charge in risking the life of an unborn child. Basically, there is other legislation that deals with that, but they're not called a person. And that's just the law. I didn't make it up. It's the law. It's funny. I found myself saying this a lot. It's like, mate, my opinion is irrelevant. I'm telling you, the law states this. It has nothing to do with me. I'm an instrument of government, instrument of the executive. It has nothing to do with me. The law states this. I am this. My role is this. That's it.
Yep.
It's funny.
Mate, you mentioned a very good point there, and I was going to mention earlier the importance of all this, and we've said it 100 times before, you've got to remain impartial. We are hunters and gatherers, and that goes for magistrates and coroners. You must remain impartial. You cannot be influenced by one side or the other. It is.
I'll go back. Sorry, you finish. I keep cutting you off, mate. I'm just excited.
I know. I've got you on another rant, haven't I? But that is, I mean, it is important for everybody to remain impartial because you cannot, if you get emotionally involved, and I said emotion clouds judgment, as soon as you get emotionally involved, you actually shouldn't stand in the case. And I will go to another magistrate. I knew that was a coroner beforehand, and he found out a bit of information behind the scene, not in court, and he actually reclused himself from being the magistrate because he said, I cannot now be impartial from what I've heard, the information I've heard outside of the courtroom. And I pay full respect to that. I thought it was very good. It's probably easier for him to sit there and go, I can pretend I didn't hear that because nobody would have known anyway. But it's, and that full tickets to him for doing that.
And that's the old, that's the conflict of interest thing coming in but it goes back to my favorite word when it comes to all this sort of thing. You've got to it's disinterested.
Yes.
You must be disinterested. And I'll say it again, my old definition, not uninterested. Uninterested means you don't give a shit and you're not going to try. Disinterested means you're going to do your absolute best and you're going to perform your duty to the best of your ability, but you have no interest in the outcome. What you're there is to search for the truth. And there was great old-fashioned detectives who did this all the time. As I get a bit older and as you don't realize how experienced you are through life. As you know, I'm relatively experienced as a detective. So when I look at things said in the media, I go, well, of course they didn't do that. Blah, blah, this is the reason. And I mean, I also know you don't listen to shit in the media, but I sit there and I go, why are they even coming up with this? It's clearly this, or it's clearly they just need to let the investigation play out. Like, stop jumping to conclusions. But yeah, that just comes with experience and all the rest of it. But
yeah, mate, you're right. And look, there's a number of times, like I listen to a couple of podcasts and some of them are crime podcasts and you listen to the evidence, but I spend my time, and this is experience, I spend my time trying to disprove what they're trying to prove. Because that's what you must do. To be impartial, you must try and I always said when like a murder investigation, you almost spend more time disproving rather than proving because your disproving will actually prove what happened against the beyond reasonable doubt because it's easy for a defense lawyer to come into a court case and sit there and go, well, did you investigate this person? No, it didn't. Well, they couldn't possibly do it. They had all the means and all that all opportunity and all that sort of thing. Well,
Yeah.
there's your case gone. It's fucked.
Yes. Inculpatory and exculpatory evidence. And you've got to provide it all. And you've got to be
Yep.
disinterested in the outcome. It might be that
Yep.
geez, I know this bloke did it.
Yep.
Cool story. Prove it in court. Like that, and that's the thing. I think I want to apologise for us for a little bit of emotion, not a lot of emotion, because once again, you've got to be a bit disinterested. But this still affects friends of mine. This sort of outcome where, especially where, okay, one man's been labelled racist for a couple of comments he made. Well, I guarantee that plenty of other people in that community have made highly racist comments to other people as well. Admittedly, they're not police on trial and whatever else, and proven like found not guilty in Supreme Court trial. But yeah, the coroner's outcome was a lot more. One, sorry, a very quick one. I know we'll probably cut this one away, but one thing that did annoy me a little bit about this was that I know that I mentioned before you have coroner's discretion about what they can include and cannot include. Well, when you do a royal commission, the government will commission that royal commission, and they will set what are called terms of reference, and that is to keep a left and right of arc. So you're exploring everything that's occurred within these parameters. This was supposed to be the inquest into the death of a man by police, and the thing is, the coroner's discretion seems to have no bounds. And it almost became, in the view of me, but also the view of almost every police officer I've ever spoken to, it felt like a royal commission into the Northern Territory Police, not a coronial inquest into the death of Kumanjayi Walker.
Yep. Yeah, mate. I would definitely agree with that. I mean, I was very upset with it, and it's yeah. We're gonna have to go into it.
We'll talk more about it because we really need to read right through it. We're just responding to the initial grabs that we've actually read, but I think what we do need to do is go through it and actually flesh things out and really take the time to speak about it and speak to other people about it. So that's what we'll do. So we're not going to go right into that, but I think what we've done today, we'll probably sum it up, mate, if you don't mind. But
yeah,
we've gone through our opinions of just the initial hit and the headlines, basically, of the inquest findings. And then we've just tried to explain a little bit how the differences are between the criminal court and the coronial court. And we threw a few big tangents in there too, because that's how we roll.
Yeah, mate, I wouldn't have it any other way.
No.
But yeah, mate, if you're happy, I think we'll finish this one off. Look, if anybody, send through your ideas or your thoughts if you've read through it or whatever. Look, we've already had quite a few, and not only from police, from a number of other people have actually sent us messages in relation to the coronial findings. So yeah, if you are involved or you know about it and you've read it and you do have any questions, ask us, and I can completely guarantee you that we will be impartial with our response.
Yes. Yeah, no, well, we will. I'm just interested. I just want to hear. I like to inform, remove the emotion, and respond to the facts. So anyway, I just want to change it up very quickly before we actually do go. We've been suggested by a very intelligent human that the "that's a Carton" thing was a bit of a catch. So what we're going to start doing is we want to hear from. It's going to be a policey thing, but we'll throw it out there to emergency services, to the Defence Force, anyone listening. We're going to start awarding people cartons. We're not giving you a carton. You have to shout your crew a carton for stupid stuff you do on duty, or getting found in the media, or leaving your baton somewhere, or losing a taser, or who knows what.
Yeah.
So
tasering yourself.
Tasering yourself. Tasering yourself. That's a carton. So we're introducing the Two Ordinary Cops. That's a Carton segment. So we want to hear from you. We're going to keep an eye out in the media, and we might find something, or we might mention, well, that's a Carton. So, yeah, we want to hear it. Sing out to us. Let us know what people have done, what your crew have done. We don't need names. We just need to know what happened.
And exactly. Just give us an idea so they know who we're talking about. Because it's very important they do pay the Carton.
Yeah. Oh, the number one rule with the Carton rule is it can't actually be criminal offending.
No.
So if it's criminal offending, no, they can go to court. But if it's if it's just human error and a bit funny and a bit of a chip to your crew, and it's just morale raising stuff, bloody oath, we'll be indifferent.
Yeah, exactly.
We'll be disinterested, and we will determine an outcome, and more than likely just award a Carton.
That's right, yeah, and we will be the judges.
Yeah.
So, yep, no, definitely, mate. Yeah, let's do that. So from here on in, at the end of the segment, we'll do the cartonable offences.
Bloody oath. Sounds good to
All
me,
right,
Schultzy. Good to see you, mate.
all right. See you next time.